Hi, everybody. I wanted to give you all a quick update on Eric's Stanford appointment today, and also a little bit of a history lesson so that maybe some of you out there won't repeat what we have been through. Um, it's really hard when your child becomes ill and you don't have any idea of um, their diagnoses or what their symptoms could possibly mean. And I went through that, and I don't want anybody else to have to do that. So, and I'm going to talk today a little bit about Eric's dysautonomia and his epilepsy diagnosis and how those came about. But before I do that, I want to talk about my Aunt Mary, who was 5 years old and out at a boating fishing trip with my grandparents and my aunt and my mom, and they were playing, and Mary was complaining about being hot. Well, they thought it was just a hot day, so they gave her water and decided to go home. And on the way home, she had a seizure. They did the right thing by rushing her immediately into a local ER. Unfortunately, the ER staff believed that Mary was having behavioral issues and tantruming. So they didn't do anything for her, and they discharged her. My grandparents put her in the car, and before they even got home, Mary went into a unbreakable seizure. I can't really pronounce the word. I think it's status epilepticus, I think, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, they tried everything they could to cool her brain down and to save her from further complications, but because the first doctor brushed her off, it was too late. And so she suffered another 72-year, I think, I don't want to get caught up on her, the date, her birth date and the date she died, but it was over 65 years that she suffered with intractable epilepsy, because she was told she had a tantrum. And I know they didn't know a lot about epilepsy back then. I mean, they were just coming off the whole idea that you put epileptics in insane asylums and try to get the demons out of them, you know. But there is a point to me bringing her up. So flash forward 60 years. Eric's having weird symptoms of seeing auras and having feelings of deja vu and being disconnected from his body. He was having physical symptoms of not feeling hunger. There were no hunger sensations. There were no sensations for that he had to use the restroom. There were, a lot of other personal things going on with him that we did not understand. I started taking him to doctors to try to figure out what might be the problem. And, sorry. And the doctors were crazy, really. They were, 1 minute his kidneys weren't empty, his bladder wasn't emptying, and his kidneys were dying, and he needed, potentially needed to have dialysis, but there was no evidence that there was anything going on. They sent us to a nephrologist, but that ended up being a neurologist doctor. It was just really screwy. They put him through all these different types of tests that he never needed. And by the time we were in the middle of this, he had his first grand mal seizure, which was, without doubt, the worst day of my life. And knowing my life, that is saying a lot. But I intercepted a phone call that I was on my way to pick him up to take him to school, and his girlfriend at the time called me, and when I picked up the phone, I could hear her screaming, and then I realized that somehow I got connected with her and the 911 call that she was on. And you guys, it was like something out of, like, when you watch Dateline or 2020 and you hear the 911 calls. I was just terrified, and we pulled up to our block, and I saw an ambulance driving by with no flashers or sirens on. And the only time I'd ever seen that in my life before is when they were coming to pick up a dead body. So I really started freaking out. And we went one way, the ambulance went the other way, and sure enough, we both pulled up in front of the house at the same time. I couldn't even go inside. I just knew my kid was dead. So my ex went in there, and he said, Eric's alive, but I think he's having a seizure. So then he gets sent to a hospital, and he comes out of the seizure, and he's, very confused. He doesn't know what's going on, but he's still acting like he normally acts. And then the neurologist came in and said, he has epilepsy, and there's some scar tissue on his brain. We're not really sure what's going on, and gives him medication for that. After that medication, Eric immediately threw his pizza across the room. Both he and his father and I were there, and we were both like, whoa, what the heck? Because Eric had never behaved that way. And anyone who knew Eric before he got sick knew that he was just the sweetest, kindest, just happy kid. Just sweet, joyful. And we cornered the doctor in the hallway, and the doctor said, oh, well, now that he has epilepsy, you're going to have to get used to this because there will be behavioral changes. And because I had spent so much time with my aunt, my mom basically took care of her for, the last 30 years of her life. I had seen a lot of behavior and also some psychosis and some things that, really worried me in terms of Eric. But I still didn't believe that this is just the way that he was stuck, So about a year into this, it finally dawned on me one day that as soon as the doctor put Keppra in Eric's IV, he started behaving this way. So I went to his neurologist at the time, and I said, I don't want him on Keppra anymore. And, I think this is causing these crazy mood swings and anger and all this other stuff this poor kid's suffering with. So she agreed to try a different medication. I asked her if there were some surgical interventions, or I had known about an implant that my aunt was a candidate for in the 90s. Unfortunately, my aunt never had it. I'm bitter about that, but she decided she didn't want to have it, and so the family didn't really push her, which, yeah, I would have. Because, with every seizure you get brain damage, and you could, they're potentially fatal depending on where they're at and how hard they are. But anyways, that's a whole other gripe. And so the doctor told me, no, we have really good medications out there. Let's just keep trying that. And I remember sitting there thinking, I sit in this office. It's crowded. You're way overbooked, and you're spending most of the time in the back room with pharmacy reps than you are even with your patients. And I just was like, I'm not going to accept that there's no hope for him. So we get him over to Stanford, and I pushed them for, I'm sitting in my garage, sorry. So I pushed them for autonomic testing, because by this time I had learned about dysautonomia, and I thought, okay, that's pretty much probably what's going on with him, as far as his brain is not sending the right signals to the different, organs of his body. So, and all the tests that we had taken over the 3 years showed that his organs were really strong. He had some stuff with his heart, but nothing too serious. And so I'm like, why is all this stuff misfiring if his organs are healthy? Well, because his brain is not sending the right signals. So it took quite a fight, but I was able to get the autonomic clinic at Stanford to accept him, and then also to run the test. And when the test came back, everything was confirmed that I thought that he had. So then the doctor says what we can do is increase salt and use compression garments and slowly build exercise tolerance. Because basically what happens with P.O.T.S, which is a part of dysautonomia, is that depending on what position your body is, your heart can soar, it could drop, your blood pressure could drop and soar, and you're all over the place. And the test proved that that's what was happening with him. They also said that they might be able to start some medication. But because Eric is so anti-pharma due to the earlier abuses and from the medical community have given us the runaround, and also because a lot of the medications they've tried on him have had really bad side effects, and he did not have a good experience at all. He didn't want to. So fast forward to this last Christmas, I decided to get him a blood pressure cuff monitor that does your heart rate and your blood pressure. And I thought, if I can get this kid to put this on his wrist one time, I know he's scientifically minded, and if he sees it with his own eyes, and he might be more open to taking the medication. So he used the cuff, and his heart rate was 177. His blood pressure was like 160 something over like 105, and it scared him. And I had already filled the prescription for the midodrine a few months before, but like I said earlier, he was a bear, and I didn't want to upset him more than I needed to. But once he saw the results, he was like, I'm willing to try the medication. Just one pill. So I gave him one pill, and he, it was absolutely amazing, the change in his mood, and he just seemed more at ease and more peaceful and happier. And every day since, things have been improving, because now that he's able to not feel like such crap, he's able to focus on some idea. I try to work with him with cognitive behavioral therapy. He wasn't even ready to receive that at that point, because he just was just walled off. It's kind of like, I would say he was shut in during those years. But he broke free, and now he's doing much better. So I wanted to let people know that it's a very weird thing that this heart pill helped his mood so much, but it did. And so I think more research needs to be done to see what the connection between that is. My theory is he just felt like crap, and it just felt hopeless, and he was stuck, and now he's not. And so that, it's amazing. But okay, so having said all that, the other thing I wanted to talk about was his RNS implant. There are several different types of epilepsy implants out there. RNS is developed specifically for people who have bilateral scleroderma or scar tissue on both sides of their brain. They can't go in and operate on both sides. The guy who actually pioneered that surgery did it, and he lost his memory completely. So they learned from that you can only work on one side. Well, since Eric has seizures coming from both sides of his brain, we discovered that during a deep rod implantation that kind of like showed us exactly what was going on in his brain. Because of that, he is not an ideal candidate. However, he was an ideal candidate for an RNS stimulation device. And if you go on YouTube and type in RNS, Stanford, you'll get all the information you need about it. So basically what they do is they set you up in 3 phases. You have a phase where you I'm getting messages, sorry. You have a phase where they go in and they glue leads like in a regular like sleep study or EEG to see what's going on in your brain. Then once you go through that and they see that there is stuff showing up, they go in and they implant these electrodes in certain regions of your brain to monitor the seizure activity and to actually induce seizures to get more data. So that was an awful surgery. It was terrible, and he went through it. He got through that. Once we got through that, we found out exactly where the seizures were coming from. We were able to go in and put in electrodes that are connected to a device that scans his brain continually, and when it sees his brain is misfiring, it corrects it. It is supposed to help stop seizures in their tracks, but the good thing about this is it records everything that's going on in his brain. So the technicians and doctors are able to look at it and know exactly where the seizures are coming from, what time of day, how hard they are, and all that kind of stuff. So now that he's got the implant in his brain and they're getting data off of them, they're able to dial up the implant. It's kind of like a spinal cord stimulator, and so it's basically just there to stop the seizures from happening, record what's going on, and also over time it teaches the brain to function properly, reducing the number of seizures and the number of the amount of medications that are required to control the seizures, theoretically. And so far, so good. We just went today. He got dialed up. His mood is still really good. The Dr. Meter at Stanford, who's an amazing neurologist, was interested in the fact that the midodrine was working on mood. So I'm sure he'll look into that. I don't think it's a fluke because it happened in December, Christmas, and he's still doing very well. And we also do notice that when he misses a dose, he gets really like cranky. So maybe if you have a child or yourself that's dealing with something like this, you can hold on, someone just walked in. You can talk to your doctor about the possibility that something like that is happening. Eric doesn't like to be on camera. So, okay, so that's it. That's my long spiel. But I just want everyone out there to know that you don't have to take what they say at face value. You don't have to stop searching. You can contact me if you have any questions, and I will help you advocate for yourself or your child. There are devices and implants out there and surgeries that can correct actually cure epilepsy if it's a unilateral kind of a deal. And sometimes when you have rage problems, it could be associated with dysautonomia issues, and it might not necessarily be seizure related issues. So I want to give you hope and to tell you to not stop fighting, and don't let them punk you, I mean, my grandparents didn't know anything 60 years ago about any of this, and the doctors didn't know very much either, but I think, they've had 60 some odd years to figure it out, and kids are still being called brats. Eric was called a brat after a second surgery by a nurse. She said no mom wants to admit that their child is a brat, and she got fired because I don't like being taught to like that, and I don't like ignorant people working around my child, especially people who are working on a neuro ward and should know that people with traumatic brain injury might have neurological issues that make them a little bit snappier than others. Not to mention the fact that he was having a very severe psychotic reaction to the steroids, but that's a whole other issue. So, okay, I'm babbling at this point, but I'm just really excited to report that things are going well. There's hope out there. Don't give up. And I'm always here if you want to talk about stuff. And you might have something to teach me too. So, I love you guys. Thanks for putting up with my crazy videos. I'm going to sneak in on Eric and see if he'll say hi. Say hi. Oops, I missed you. Yeah. All right, I'm going to go chill out. Talk to you guys later. Bye.